Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a MedStrade session, sustainability session on the future of greener boating. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, both speakers and participants. Those of you who attended MedStrade last year will recall a similar panel that we had in place. We do have two new faces today. It's continuing the discussion around greener boating, quite a broad topic to cover in such a short time, but we're going to do our best today to find out really what's happened since the last time we spoke, so since a year ago. We understand that this year has been quite challenging from numerous aspects, from political reasons to elections to medical challenges. And one of my concerns has been this year really around, is sustainability taking a back seat to more pressing matters? So has it been diluted somewhat for more immediate concerns around what's happened this year? And I think actually there's been some really positive signs within these various lockdowns that we've faced over the last 7 or 8 months, in that boating and the sort of yachting lifestyle has become quite a key component to people's way of enjoying outdoors, being out in the ocean. And I think there's a lot of appreciation for both for what the industry does, but also the joy it provides and the level of relaxation and everything else. I'd like to start today's session with Vienna, who probably doesn't need much of an introduction at all. She's part of the Water Revolution Foundation, does a lot of work with different institutes. One of the early questions I think we face is, we're familiar with different bits of legislation coming through. We know that EU Green Deal has a large focus on measures that need to take place before 2050. We're also aware of, there's another, is it the Mission Starfish 2030 that the European Commission has also introduced? So there's a lot of high-level discussion. I think, Vienna, it would be nice to hear what in the last sort of year you've been working on, and what your focus has been, not just from a legislative point of view, but from you know, what yards are doing to try and, you know, move the sustainability topic forward on their agendas.
Hi, Peter, and thank you for having me here, and thank you to you all for your interest, for being here. Yes, that's a very nice question, because, you know, my work was always about accelerating the introduction of innovation within the yachting cluster. And by facing for many years now the challenge of ecological intelligence, we know that the problem is there for a very long time. And year after year, now it's 5 years ago that the Sustainable Development Goals were launched and the Agenda 2030 became reality. But we, and specifically my work, focused exactly on this topic since I will say 2010. So far from the Sustainable Development Goals were delivered. And that's why I do think that it's much better, it was much better for the yachting industry to set up its own agenda instead of being forced by legislation or regulatory frameworks or even public opinion. Because working, you know, I have an academic background, and working on in research, you know that the solutions are already there. So for me, it was very worthwhile and very interesting, and had an enthusiastic experience in doing that to facilitate the adoption of this kind of solution, or at least the strategic direction we need to go in order to find solutions. and was such an exciting path. You know, for me, it was very important to set up the water evolution model. That was my very, very first step within this industry, specifically the super yachting industry, in order to showcase how it's possible to take advantage from the current challenges and to transform a challenge into an opportunity. And that's exactly what we stay for as a foundation. Now the Water Evolution Foundation is there. I had the pleasure and the honor to present it also within the Innovation Lab at Metz 2 years ago. And we are there, delivering solution. I hope we will have time today to go throughout that.
Great. No, thanks very much, Vienna. And moving on to a slightly different aspect, those who joined us last time will understand there was quite a discussion around propulsion and how energy sources are obviously a big topic within the sustainability on board items. So I'd like to ask Laurent, he's been working with Energy Observer Developments. Laurent, actually, I should add, I was very sad not to be able to go to Cannes this year and see, I think there was a new 40-foot project that you've been involved with. So maybe you could just give us a brief overview of that project and where things are heading.
Thanks for the introduction. Well, in fact, the boat was not even shown at Cannes because Cannes didn't take place, and neither was it shown at Monaco. But we did introduce it in Monaco end of September, at the time when it was meant to be at the Monaco Yacht Show. So we did that presentation at the Yacht Club in Monaco. And the thing about that project, it's the first tender, I would say, that is meant to be produced in series. And what's interesting about it is that it showcases how the use of hydrogen is meant to be combined with batteries. You know, most of the people think that when you think hydrogen, you think it's going to be 100% hydrogen for everything. The reality is that that is not practical or possible at the moment, especially on larger yachts. And what we've done with that tender is to demonstrate, like we do on Energy Observer, the boat, how it's the combination of various renewable sources, renewable energies combined together that can actually provide a solution, and I would say a temporary or a transition. I mean, we call it energy transition at the moment. That's for a very good reason, is that it's not really practical to think about hydrogen as the one solution that fits everything. And so the way we look at it and the way we work on the projects we do at the moment is really through a combination of various energies and various sources. And the beauty of it is that it's a way to avoid having to face the issues of storage, because that's one of the big problems at the moment for hydrogen on board yachts, obviously. Well, it's a big problem for hydrogen storage everywhere. I mean, not so much for safety, and I'll get back to that, but for volume, basically, because we can so far only use compressed hydrogen. And I would say that legally, from a regulation perspective, it must remain within 350 bars of pressure, which is not satisfying enough to be able to be accommodated on board boats, and especially I would say medium-sized boats. So in that respect, hydrogen by itself is not sufficient, for sure. I mean, there's no point in trying to advocate the use of hydrogen for 100% propulsion and life on board. It doesn't work. But what works, and what we have been advocating, and what we're doing when we make studies on a number of projects we work on at the moment, is that smart combination of the use of renewable energy. So, for example, solar panels, which, as you said, there are more and more on board yachts, but also a combination of batteries. And through all the studies and the projects we work on, the key thing that we've come to realize is that the current scenario, I would say the ideal scenario, especially given the issues many people may have, and we have as well, with the life cycle of batteries, is to combine batteries with the use of hydrogen.
And I think, I mean, it really emphasizes the point that there isn't just a one-size-fits-all solution to our industry. I think there's a lot of unique challenges, being a global industry that, you know, outside of the Med and outside of US waters, you may struggle to find sources of fuel, not necessarily just hydrogen, but you know, if a yacht's set up with biofuels or the like, it may be quite tricky initially until there is some supply there to source those kind of fuelings. While we're on this subject, I'd like to bring in Ken, who has a lot of experience with hybrid propulsion, with trying to optimize energy sources on board, so between generators and main propulsion systems, and just in general, I think you've got a lot of experience there, Ken. How do you see the current status of propulsion? I know within many different discussions, we see lots of talk about this biofuel, HVO fuels, there's hydrated vegetable oil fuels, and the like. Clearly, marine, you know, the engine manufacturers themselves are taking notice. We know that there's been a lot of exploration into the electrical drive side of things. Where do you see things heading, Ken?
Well, thanks very much, Patrick. It's been a fascinating 12 months since the last Mets, and we've seen a lot of developments in the market and in the technologies available. The one thing that hasn't changed is that the demand is there. As boats get bigger and people's expectations get greater, the need for more power on board, whether that's for propulsion or for house demands, is only going to increase. This is not going to go away. And I think if we want to keep selling boats, then we have got to address it head on. And I thought Laurent's presentation on the use of hydrogen was really interesting, because there are many parallels with what we're seeing in the marketplace at the moment as well. The client, I mean, it's all driven by client demand. And what has surprised me recently is the number of relatively naive users that are coming into the market. These are people who believe the dream, you know, who actually do want to be around. They passionately want to own a boat and to live on board their boat, but they're also not prepared to compromise on their quality of life. And that means more power. It means simplification of systems, and essentially what they're asking for is high power density systems and off-grid operation. So there are parallels in other industries as well, notably the recreational vehicle industry, because they're facing the same pressures that we are. I think what I've found in this past year is that we have a lot to learn from the electric vehicle industry, where they are also tackling these problems. They're driven much more by legislation than we are, although what happens in the automotive industry is very likely to be followed in the marine industry as well. And the electric vehicle industry, automotive industry in general, has much more money to put behind its research and development programs. So the approach that we've taken to supplying this client demand to high power density systems and simplicity of operation is to have a long, close look at what the automotive industry is doing and seeing what kind of technology we can steal from them. Beg, steal or borrow, or whatever, in order to satisfy that very clear client demand for these products. And there's a lot of lessons we can learn, not just technological. If we look at what Tesla have done, for example, their technology is arguably second to none, but they've also gone for the high-end market first rather than the low end. They're promoting their new technology in a new way. Tesla cars are absolutely leading edge in every sense, not just the propulsion sense. And they're pushing that end of the market. They're not pushing the milk float end of the market. We've had electric vehicles for centuries, but we can't use the old technologies to satisfy the new market demands. The old solutions won't work. That's equally as valid for us. If you want high power density on your boat, alternators and 12-volt systems or constantly running generators are absolutely not the answer. So what we've been looking at is a multifaceted approach. One is to look much more seriously at energy harvesting, exactly the approach that Laurent was describing, with much more use of solar. We're working on boats with very, very large solar arrays now, much bigger than I've seen before, much bigger wind generators. And we have also moved ahead with using automotive motor generators to be the source of electrical power. So last year when I was talking, most of the systems that we were putting out into the smaller boat market were essentially alternator based, very high power alternators, but alternator based. This year we have built inline generator systems using automotive motor generators.
Right.
So essentially you create a space between the main engine and the gearbox, drop an automotive electrical machine in there, and harvest the power overhead available on a typical marine diesel. That is the power gap between the optimum running point of that engine and the propeller load. So much same principles as we've been using before, but scaled up. And the quality of the technology available to do that, available from the automotive industry, is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. We're looking at now 100 kilowatts in a driveline generator. So on, say, a 500 horsepower main engine, in addition to the propulsion load, you can add 100 kilowatts of electrical load. And this is all coming from a drop-in machine between the engine and the gearbox, which is only 100 millimeters wide. So phenomenal.
That's actually a very good point, I think, to bring in Andrea, who during our last session spoke about that quality of life on board and how owners weren't necessarily asking for sustainable options themselves, but enjoyed the benefits of no noise for a period at anchor, etc.
And if we come back to it later, Patrick, you asked about clients' demand for sustainability and evidence, so I'm happy to address that. And there are one or two other things around using the inline motor generator. There are a couple of other benefits there, like torque boost for planing boats, allowing you to drop the overall engine size on a planing vessel. So there's a whole load of implications of really embracing automotive technology and being prepared to break the standard paradigm on current production boats.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Ken. I think if we've got some time, we will definitely come back to that.
Okay, thank you.
So heading over across to a more boat building approach as such, Andrea, I know you as Sunseeker have been working quite closely with other sectors within the industry, the component suppliers. I think I read somewhere about a collaboration that you had with Wave International just regarding filters and things like that. Is there still that demand from clients that you're seeing? Is that picking up at Sunseeker, where you see a more educated owner or end user asking for very specific technologies?
we produce 150 yachts per year. And if I make a statistic, unfortunately, in terms of demand of high level of technology and sustainable technology, I'm talking about 5%. That's the reality. The most important thing is which kind of benefit really you deliver to the customer when you approach a sustainable technology. And of course, you know, normally who purchase a yacht, for a brand new yacht, normally keep the yacht 3 years, 2 years, depends, at latest 5 years. And so the end of the life of the yacht is not something that the original customer honestly taken in consideration as much as potentially in the future will be. I completely agree with Ken. I personally, I made for first the hybrid applications on motor yacht in 2006 with a patent. At that time, it was quite innovative, lithium batteries and everything, propulsion and power generation. Honestly, all the customers I talked about in 2008, 10, 12, and then I move on making this kind of yachts, they all was really interested by the benefit given to have the possibility to stop the generator for a long time. That's the most important thing, because you know, you see in my background now how normally I operated a yacht, a tanker in a beautiful bay with all the water toys all around and people swimming and something like that. So try to imagine swimming very close to an exhaust pipe where oil, smoke, noise, everything is going on. And so the benefit to install lithium battery, even better if the package is helped by solar panel, like Laurent said, or even if the system is not born by only by lithium, but also by hydrogen, it's even better. But the real benefit, it's the fact that your boat is smoke and noise free at least for 8 hours. And that's the real benefit that a lot of customers are asking for. So as a Sunseeker, we are offering on our Ocean 50, that is a 50 meters, and in our Ocean 42, a full hybrid package that includes propulsion and include also power generation and batteries, of course, until today, lithium, not yet hydrogen. As soon as the technology will be really available, and also the possibility to fulfill hydrogen everywhere in the harbor, we are we are ready to install on board, but unfortunately, if we're talking about today, it's not yet ready, the technology, in order to supply power everywhere in the world. But you can find electricity in your marinas, and so you can use the boat being exit from the marina without any smoke and noise. That's a real benefit for the local community. Try to imagine in Monaco, in Monte Carlo, at the in June or July, when everybody starts a big engine diesel to go out on the sea, it's really damaging, noise and smoke, everything. And so try to imagine which kind of benefit you can get if your boat can get out on the sea by electric propulsion. Then you turn on, when you are 10 miles offshore, you can turn on your diesel engine. Yeah. In an hour of navigation, you can fully recharge your batteries and stay at anchor 8 hours without any diesel genset on.
It's always interesting to learn how these. Propulsion is obviously a topic. Generation, onboard power, Maybe now if we just change a little bit to a sort of a more built environment, and Igor, perhaps we can just talk about some of the sustainable materials that are available today for a manufacturer. I know during another session from one of these sustainability sessions on end-of-use boats, there was a real focus on composites, how at the moment the current crisis of trying to recycle boats is obviously impeded by the way they've been built in the past. Do you mind just maybe talking about some of the materials that Van Yachts are using currently?
Sure. But if I apologize, I have to respond just briefly on the last half hour because I've been dying to get into it. But because I think it is important to point out that electrification in itself is not sustainable. So we hear a lot of talk about electrification for luxury purposes, for more comfort on board, which is obviously great. And it will drive the innovation for more electrification, whether it's in vehicles or whether it's in boats. So it is great for that. It drives up the volume. It drives up it drives down the prices of batteries. But it's not sustainable in itself. It really depends on where that energy stored in that battery comes from, what makes it sustainable or not. So I very much welcome the fact that more and more propulsion will be electrified, but it's still dependent on where do we get that energy from. In fact, the diesel electric systems are less, in principle, are less efficient than direct drive diesel to the shaft, because you have less conversion of energy. So I really, electrification in itself is not enough, and we get electricity from letting the propeller spin, and generation comes from that, which is another renewable source when you're sailing, I think. So yeah, it's a great step forward, and I think if you look at what Tesla is doing with cobalt-free batteries now, recently launched on their battery day about a month ago, I think there's great progress, and that comes from that increased demand. So it's great for that. The next step will be, let's generate as much power sustainably as we can. Now back to your question about materials. It is interesting to see and learn now that we started Van 2 years ago, and I was on the panel about a year ago, and we've been, actually we tried to shy away from hardcore innovation, because in my prior business, which was all about renewable energy and local power generation, I learned that is a different and a very pricey hobby. So what we try to do is just apply very simple basic principles. Is a material recyclable? Is a material bio-based? And if it's recyclable, can we source it from already recycled sources? That's not rocket science at all. That's very basic logic, I think. And we found that there are so many materials out there that are available, that are certified, that can be applied today. And this is how we found that post-consumer scrap aluminium developed by Hydro. So these are old window frames, etc. It's not just recyclable end of life, but it's already been used for 30 years as a window frame, for instance. And when you just look at suppliers and ask them these questions, we found that there's a lot of options out there, actually. And it's just a matter of applying that simple logic to your own procurement process or design process, really. And well, we found many examples, but the hard problem now is, the difficult problem is that we, of course, also buy a lot of ready-made off-the-shelf products. And those have materials in them, of course, as well. How do we get that information from the manufacturer of, say, a deck hatch, or sails, or a boom? Or so I think the really difficult challenge right now for any supply chain, but also the yacht building supply chain, is to come up with standards and verifiable standards, so that any manufacturer can provide you with a document telling you what is in there, not just material strength, material performance, but also its sourcing. And a lot of companies are trying this, and there's a lot of systems out there like LCA, etc. But if you look at the number of databases that can go into an LCA calculation, we need a database for all the databases that are out there, honestly.
Vienna, maybe it's a good opportunity if you can explain, just now that we're touching on this LCA type of tool or database, could you just briefly touch on what the Water Revolution Foundation assessments?
Absolutely, that's really something I want to step in. Thank you, Igor, for coming up with this kind of needs, because it's really true. I do think that it's not only clients asking for more sustainable solution, even if of course they live on this planet. So I do think they are smart enough to understand our challenges as an international community, let's say. But it's much more, we are a mature industry. We need to take this responsibility and to do the most out of it, because it could be not just a challenge, but really an opportunity. And when I think about this, I think also about the regenerative economy, circular economy, all this kind of new framework in order to be an updated industry in our time and to really address the challenge we need to address. But let's go very practical. That's why from the very beginning, when I started applying science to this industry, was all about, I will say, industrial ecology. And when you look from the ecological point of view, you need some tools, very easy tool to use. Igor, it's absolutely right. When you look at any kind of components, any kind of material, any kind of energy flow, you need to assess that, and you need to assess that looking at a huge amount of data. And that's why from the very beginning, I started applying the computational sustainability field in order to deliver and to develop and then to deliver this very nice tool. Today, this is the Yacht assessment tool. It was at the very beginning the Yachting 4.0, but now the Yacht assessment tool is being fine-tuned by the partners of the foundation. And we are able to apply with this tool the LCA approach, so to have a real sustainable assessment, and compare this assessment is allow us to really understand what is about improving sustainability in our sector, which are the real benefit, the cost-benefit ratio of doing that. And you see very clear, because that's only to make it's about making the math, and that's it. And of course, our very first goal was to simplify all that. Otherwise, Igor, it's absolutely true. He's saying absolutely the truth when he says you need a database to understand the database. But now the work is there. We have done this work with the Yacht assessment tool. And in the upcoming weeks, we are able to launch also the Sustainable Solution Database. And why that? Because we are working within the industry with all the entire supply chain, and step by step, all the companies are really on board of this kind of work, and we can measure, and by measuring, we can really assess which are the more sustainable solutions. And also by an holistic framework, by using an holistic framework, which is the cost-benefit ratio. That's important for the industry. This is very important for the supply chain, but it's also very important for clients because it's really transparent. They do see the value. And let me underline also the fact that it's very important also for regulator, for policy makers. And why that? Because it's very important that the work we are doing as an industry in order to really bridge the gap between what we know and what we do. And you're right. I think that Ken was speaking about the lack of regulation, if I understand well. And that's right, there is a lack of regulation. And we as an industry need to really address this lack and to find the solution and to speak up, saying which is the best solution. Otherwise, when regulation comes first, and that's a problem for us because it comes at a cost and probably it's not the best solution they could call for. So that's why we are working within the industry in order to understand that and to set up our own agenda. Let me underline also another aspect, that it's about the Yeti. Probably you are already familiar with the Yeti project, the Yacht Environmental Transparency Index. We are really hard at work also on this work table with the industry as a whole, I will say, especially with the yacht builders, in order to find this index and to set up a shared standards, and so to fulfill the criteria of this standardization in order to be transparent, saying why something is more sustainable than something else.
Yeah.
That needs to be really, really transparent. And that's the work we are doing as a foundation. And let me close the circle by underlining and highlighting that, of course, it's crucial to measure, it's crucial to assess, to monitor, and to reduce. But then it's very important also to reinvest in our most important stakeholders, because the ocean. And why that? Of course, it's so important for the, it's the supporting system for the entire life on this planet. But even if we want to look just at our sector, of course, clients need to sail in a healthy ocean. Otherwise, there is no pleasure at all.
Absolutely.
So that's why we say we need to close the circle. We know that the ocean are really struggling. We need to reinvest in that, but also by reinvesting in ocean conservation. And I'm using this word, this verb, reinvesting, because it's really an investment for us. Is about making conservation transparent as we need to be. It's not about raising money for any kind of philanthropic organization, but really to understand scientific-based conservation projects that are able to be partner in order to reinvest and to showcase return on investment. And in this way, you really close the circle.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree that, especially when you touch on when you approach new and upcoming legislation that we're going to face as an industry without having the right bits of data and assessment at hand to engage with regulators, it's very difficult. And with that comes that transparency aspect.
Patrick, can I just add briefly, just briefly on customer demand and the question that you asked? I think asking that question today is a little, it might give you the wrong impression that maybe 5% is asking for sustainable solutions. I think we experience a great deal of requests and inquiries. And I think it's really about being, if an option that is sustainable is on the market, the demand for it will increase dramatically over when it's not on the market. So people have a hard time asking for things that are not there. Right. So I think if we have the sustainable solutions on the market and you don't have one as a manufacturer, you're going to be really in trouble, because in principle, I think people will buy the right product if it's, if other criteria are equal.
Absolutely.
I not completely agree with that. To me, it's important also that the government support the expansion of this technology, because the technology is available and not the best technology. I understand your point about the electrification, but I'm not completely agree with your statement, because you know better than me that when you have many diesels, when they are brand new technology and everything, has a 35% of efficiency. When there are old diesel, maybe 28 or something like that. A central unit provider of electricity, they have a transformation efficiency about 55 to 60%. And the transmission chain, it's quite lower than that. I mean, reduction in efficiency. And so anyway, charging batteries from the shore, it's efficient, but of course is not taking over the possibility to be supplied for propulsion, but for the total load, you can live a day without burning fuel on the sea. And so overall, it's the technology available today, and this is something absolutely helpful and welcome by customer, but it's expensive. It's still expensive. And this is a limitation of the diffusion of the technology, because when you face the final real customer of Yacht, I'm talking only about that, of course, value for money and in general terms pricing, it's very important. And so to me, government has to increase, to facilitate the application, and then the cost has to be reduced.
Yeah.
If I may jump in at this stage.
We're going to have to make it quite quick, Laurent. Sorry, we're going over our time. But, yeah.
Very, very quickly, one thing I've realized is that I've come to see is that the government, it's really, everything is a chicken and egg story, really. And especially when it comes to hydrogen. But also for governments is that if they see users, if they see that there's an increase, and then they will support. And that's what's happening with hydrogen and the production of green hydrogen, which is being supported in Europe. So that, and to get back to what Igor was saying, is that at the end of the day, the electrification on board yachts will need to come from a sustainable source, which green hydrogen is meant to be. So as much as I agree with Andrea about the fact that at the moment, with the technology available, batteries is good, and that combination is relevant. Very, very soon, it will be the combination of hydrogen as a clean energy source, which can power the batteries that are available, and then make it a virtuous circle and cycle for everybody. Which is why I keep saying, you know, we'll get the support, but we need the users, and it's time to shift, basically.
May I say something very quickly, Patrick?
Yeah.
Really a couple of words just to say that I can totally agree with you, Laurent. And of course, I totally agree also with Andrea when he says needs to be a common effort. It's not just the industry, it's not just the client. It's, you know, the 17 goals by the Sustainable Development Goals is about that, strategic partnership in order to make things happen. And that's why at Water Revolution, we are really working in in a very practical way to take real action, and not just to talk about this, and to set standards, to have tools. That's really the way to go. But it's a work for all of us, all together. Absolutely. So thank you so much for this very nice opportunity, Patrick.
No, well, thank you everyone for joining today. And the whole point behind these sessions is exactly that, just to try and broaden the network, get involved. Different sectors are involved, and trying to bring up those that aren't necessarily fully aware of what the options are, or what upcoming legislation is going to impact. So thank you all very much for your time today. Sorry it was so short. We'd obviously love to rather do this in person. So hopefully see you all, hopefully next year at Medstrade, if not before. But thank you for your time today.